So I woke up from the hospital just in such emotional pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was months later when the physical pain was gone that I said to myself, okay, you used every part of your story to help people. Why can't you use this part?
Welcome to A Life Well Lived, where we pull back the curtain on the extraordinary lives of our remarkable members. I'm James Henderson, CEO of Exclusive Resorts. For me, travel's never been about the destination, it's always been about the company you keep. Over the years, I've crossed paths with some of the world's most fascinating, well-traveled individuals, each bound by a singular pursuit: to live not just well, but exceptionally. Their stories aren't just worth telling, they're worth learning from. Because in the end, it's not about where we go, but how we choose to live. In this episode, we're honored to share the story of Christine Handy, model, motivational speaker, breast cancer survivor, and author of the best-selling memoir, Walk Beside Me. After a life-changing diagnosis, Christine turned pain into purpose. Her story was recently adapted into the film Hello Beautiful, which has already won Best Film at the 2025 Beverly Hills Film Festival. Today, she continues to inspire, redefining beauty, strength, and what it means to live with purpose. To lead this conversation, we're joined by seasoned storyteller and friend of the club, Erin Lenz.
Today, we're joined by Christine Handy. Christine, welcome.
Thank you.
We're so honored to tell your story today and to spend some time together. So let's dive right in and talk about why we're here in St. Louis and on this special day, because your film, Hello Beautiful, is premiering this afternoon. And you've already been on a whirlwind tour with other cities as well. What do you think is most resonating with audiences since it's been so well received?
Well, the team of Hello Beautiful really sought out to give the world a film about cancer with survivorship. And that's always been our mission. And we believe in the depth of our soul that this powerful movie has a place in the world. And of course, we think the finished product is beautiful. But you never really know until you put it out into the world how the world will react. And I would say at this point, between the festivals and, a few people have seen it. There's probably 600 people that have seen this movie. 600.
Wow.
It's not many.
Yep, with a lot more on the way.
Right, but if you think about 600 people seeing a product,
Yeah.
it's just not, but the wave effect that it's already created, the posts on Facebook that I often don't even see, people forward it to me, the impact it's already had with 600 people just makes me hopeful of the future of this film, that it will impact 6 million people. I don't think there's any ceiling to what we can do when our heart is pure and it's trying to move mountains and give people hope and show courage and show resilience. And I think there's not a better time right now. The breast cancer community, we feel like there's an epidemic going.
Right.
Every other day you hear of diagnoses and it's heartbreaking. And so to have a product like this that we can place in the world to show hope it matters.
Absolutely, it does. It matters so much so that you've recently won Best Film at the 2025 Beverly Hills Film Festival, and then you also just snagged Best Drama Feature at the 2025 Philadelphia Independent Film Festival. Congrats.
Thank you.
How does it feel to share your story on the big screen?
Well, it's different. I first saw the film on my computer and I shed a few tears, but when it's on the big screen and you have the music, which we did in London with the London Symphony Orchestra, and you have the acting, which is exceptional, especially with Tricia Helfer, and the colorist who did a remarkable job to, fix all the mistakes that we had during filming because we don't have a huge budget like a Lionsgate. It was really profound for me to see that on a big screen. Of course, I had my son, Noah, on one side of me and my father on the other side, and I think that they were both crying.
I can only imagine, yeah.
We don't negate the depth of pain women go through in this movie. We show that because we don't want to dismiss that part of the journey, which is intense.
Right.
But we also show, obviously hope. We want to show both because people want to be seen and heard. And so often, like my father, when he first saw the movie, he said, I can't believe I didn't know this happened. I was at the big events in your life. I was at your mastectomy. I was at your first chemo. And I was there during different parts of your journey, but I had no idea what you went through. And he said, that's when he really became a believer of this film, because he said, if I didn't know and I felt like I was present, how many people don't know what their spouse is going through or their friend is going through? And we can't really support people unless we know.
Right.
And so for him, that's become a big mission for him, is to get it out there because of that. He wants people to feel seen and heard and not feel alone like I do.
Let's talk about the book, because that's what led up to the film. And I'm curious, the film was adapted from Walk Beside Me, which came out how long ago?
2016.
2016. So now here we are 9 years later, and the film is out. And I'm curious, how does it feel, or how is it different to have the book come out and then the film come out? Is there a difference in telling the story in those two mediums?
Well, the story is, you can't put everything that happened to me in a movie. And as an example, I have just a mountain of women that stand by me during my cancer diagnosis and the other seasons of illness in my life. But you can't put 20 women in a movie. You have to condense it. And so I did not write the screenplay for the film. Ziad Hamza did. And he did a remarkable job kind of integrating the different personalities of the 20 friends into 3 characters,
Wow.
3 friendships.
Wow.
And we took out 2 other illnesses that I had because it became a bit confusing. And so the book is very different, and in real life is different as well. The book is based on my story. It's a fictional depiction of my story. The film is a little further away from even the book. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why we did that is because, I think everybody's family has issues, and especially when you have illness. And I was a sick mom for a long time. I had 3 pretty major illnesses, and that caused some chaos at home, and things were getting left undone at home from a parenting perspective. And so we wanted to show disruption in the house, but in the book, I touched on it, but in the film, we make it so extremely different than anything my kids experienced, because we don't want them to think, we're just putting our dirty laundry out into the world. It's not their dirty laundry.
Right.
And we're just trying to show that illness impacts a whole family. And so I think that the changes were important for not only me personally, but just to show a journey through breast cancer with, interruption at home and all these other issues that people go through. But it's almost benign to me because I didn't exactly go through those types of things. So there's variations of my story out there in the book and now the film.
That's great. Excellent. Let's talk about the medical history, because that obviously is the foundation to all of this and the lead up to the film. And I do want to talk about, if you're comfortable with it, the 2 illnesses that led up to the breast cancer diagnosis. But let's start with the breast cancer diagnosis. Take us back to that phone call that I read about in your book, but to that phone call, which I know isn't easy, but if you're willing, if you could take us back to that day and just let listeners know what happened.
I think it matters to talk about the first 2 illnesses because there was in my mental state, such a degradation from feeling like I was a self-proclaimed athlete. I thought I was an athlete. I was very good at yoga, and I've probably walked around the world because I walk so much. And to have this kind of focus on my external beauty, and to have my first illness, which was the colon resection, and that turned into a debacle, and then the scars that came with that, and then the arm, it was slowly, those things were not only affecting my self-esteem, but I wasn't helping my self-esteem as well. I was so focused on things that don't matter. And so by the time I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was in such a place of despair. Some I mean, some would say it was self-induced, right? And because I was so focused on things that could be taken away, like my external beauty and materialism and things that aren't flattering. But I do talk about those things very freely because I was extremely focused on the wrong things. So I think when I got to that place and that moment of a diagnosis, I just really quit. I quit life. I was like, okay, all the things I focused on, and I did a really good job focusing on materialism, that's now come to an end. I can no longer carry the beautiful bags that I coveted. And now my beautiful hair is going to be stolen from me. And I was really in this very much a victim mode. Why is this happening to me? I had this very privileged attitude. And slowly, when those things get pruned and, you know, stripped away from you, you have to quickly realize, like, what is it about you that people are showing up for? What part of you is, what part of you matters? And so going back to that day, your question, it was a horrible day.
I can only imagine.
It was a really
Given what you've
traumatic
been
day.
through. Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. I'm allergic to sugar. I lived a very healthy life. I have no family history of it. My mother's best friend died of it the year before, and I just couldn't believe it. But when it started to really digest inside of me, I was emotionally paralyzed, and I was making very bad choices.
Bad choices, how so?
I
If you
wanted
could
to
expand on
quit.
that.
I
Yeah.
just wanted my life to be over.
Right.
I couldn't see beyond. I wasn't sure I was going to make it through chemotherapy to begin with, because they shared with me what I was about to go through, and I was like, how am I going to ever get through that?
Right.
I couldn't even start chemotherapy because they said it would destroy the grafts in my arm that they had just put in. They just rebuilt my arm with bone grafts from a cadaver, and I was like, I can't even start chemo to fight this illness. How am I ever going to get through it?
Right.
And if I'm not going to get through it, I'm just going to take myself out of this equation right now. And mentally, I was not in obviously a stable place. Like, I wasn't doing anybody a favor, but I thought I was doing people a favor. I thought, well, my kids, the focus shouldn't be on me. It shouldn't be constantly on my illness. It should be on them. But that wasn't happening. And so I thought, well, if I quit, then life will be more normal for them. Well, that was a distorted view, right? But I couldn't see that at the
Right.
time.
Distorted, but I can't even imagine how dark of a place mentally you traveled to already with all the medical, journey that you had. And they were major medical traumas that you had leading up to the breast cancer. And then you're told that you had to have a whopping 28 rounds
rounds of chemotherapy.
So how did you get your head wrapped around that, or can you? Is it one of those things where you're like, okay, and we can, use the title of your book to talk about this a little bit further too, but, I'll just take this step by step. I mean, at some point you must have to compartmentalize it, right?
Well, I wasn't thinking that.
Yeah, no, not in the midst of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how, to be very specific. That very night, we were supposed to see an oncologist, my ex-husband and I couldn't go to that appointment. I was so frightened, and I couldn't hear anything at the time. And we kind of got into a squabble about it. He was like, you have to go. They have to tell you. And I said, no, you have to go. They'll tell you and you can take notes. I can't go. I'm so afraid. And so it was that fear that just was strangling me. And I remember saying to my ex-husband, we need to tell the kids because they're going to know something's wrong. I can't hide this. And so we told my younger son, but my older son was in boarding school. And so slowly, I got into the mode of, okay, I have to take it step by step, moment by moment, day by day. But that was a while for me.
Right.
It was a while.
What
Too long.
time? Yeah, I was going to ask if you can remember what that time span was like.
Well, okay, so I went through 15 months of chemo.
Yep.
And the arm situation was a year. So I would say 3 months into chemo, I started to go, okay, there may be a reason for my life. There may be a reason for me to stay here.
Yeah.
But it took me a while. And I had all these women show up for me every single day. One of my best friends made a calendar of friends. She had a Monday girl, she had a Tuesday girl, a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday girl, and she had floaters on the weekend.
Wow.
So every single day, one of my very best friends showed up at 8 in the morning, until 5 o'clock at night. And they took care of me, they took care of my kids, they took care of everything. If I had to go to an appointment, they took me. If I needed to be fed, they fed me. There were 2 times during my journey where I could not lift my arm. So I couldn't even take a sip of water.
Wow.
Because I had a cast in my right arm from my fingertips to my shoulder. And then on this arm, I had just had lymph nodes removed, and you can't lift your arm for 7 days. So I was literally like this, and people were feeding me. And that's a really dark place to be in, because I felt like I was a pretty independent person for a long time. And now I was literally being taken care of. And I thought, this is not the life I want to live.
Oh, I mean, yeah. And you call that tribe of women your angels in your book. And I would imagine that tribe has maybe even gotten larger, or
Yes.
that they're still very much a
Yeah.
part of your life. I found that such a moving aspect to reading your story and learning about your journey. Can you talk to us a little bit about your angels further and the bracelets, and how that you used the word movement earlier, and I think that movement is very much gaining momentum.
Yeah.
So what was that haircut party like? I wanted to ask about, which is,
Yeah.
I'm sure, hard to sort of relive as well, but it is, as you said, one of the first things, whether it's vain or not, it's human, right?
Yeah, of
You're told
course.
that you have cancer, and we all think about, I'm going to lose my beautiful hair, I'm going to look a certain way. And that haircut party, talk to us a little bit about that. And is it in the movie? I'm curious about that as well.
The haircut party was just kind of one of the beginnings of these friends who just took over my life. Like, wait, I mean, this is going to sound silly, but one of my friends had picked me up, and she had bought my favorite wine in the car. I mean,
Good
just
for her.
there's these
I
tiny
mean,
little things. And I showed up, and I didn't know it was a haircut party. It was a surprise. So I showed up at the hairdresser's, and I wanted to go on a Sunday because I was embarrassed. I made the haircut appointment for a Sunday because I felt shame. And, because let me talk about that for a second. When my parents I was little, and somebody would be diagnosed with cancer, my parents would go, oh, so-and-so has cancer.
A whisper,
A
right?
whisper, because it was
Yes.
almost shameful.
Yes.
And so when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was like, I feel so much shame. And that's sad, right? That's
Very
a terrible,
sad. There's
that's a
fear,
terrible
and then
emotion.
to have shame on top of it.
Fear and shame and guilt. Like, what did
Yes.
I do?
Yes.
How did this happen? And guilt as a parent, right? I'm sick all the time, and here are these kids that need to be taken care of. So going back to the haircut party, I made it for a Sunday, so nobody was there. All of a sudden, we pull up in my friend's car, and I'm trying to drink a glass of wine. I got a full cast on my right arm, and we pull up to the hairdresser place, and there's tons of people there.
Oh,
And
that's so heartwarming.
some friends flew in town from St. Louis. So it was
Incredible.
30 people who all sat there with me and watched him cut my hair. And my son, Luke, gave my other son a hair wash. And, so people were actively doing other things at the time, but I'll never forget that. That was a real moment where I thought, gosh, people are really showing up for me. Why?
Yes.
If they care about me, why? What is about me? And that's when I started to do some introspective work to figure out, well, what part of me is lovable? If these other things aren't my measure, what part of me is lovable? And so that's when I started to really figure it out. I was lovable.
That is, well, of course, all along.
Well, I didn't think it,
And meeting you in just this short amount of time, there's such a light that you carry. And so, can you talk about that a little bit more, about why you're lovable and what you found, the positive? If you can, let's talk about the positive, the best and worst aspects of cancer.
Oh gosh.
Which I know that's a
The
bit
best
of a
and the
loaded
worst parts
question.
of cancer. Well, you know what? It really did transform my life. So I'll say that. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. It's so difficult, physically, from a physical standpoint as well as emotional. I find the emotional to be way worse. But it cleared up a lot of my path that was corroded. First of all, I started modeling as a child, and that was my decision. Nobody pushed me into the industry, but I coveted that. I really, if I didn't get the certain modeling job, I felt bad about myself. And so I tried really hard to get the next big modeling job. And when I got the guest campaign in LA, that wasn't big enough for me. It was always like the goalpost was always moving, and it was my self-esteem. It was just not healthy. And looking back, it's so obvious, but at the time I didn't think that.
Yeah, how do you know when you're
How do
in
you
it?
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be like I would go shopping and I would bring home a bag and then I'd open it and I'd be like, okay, now it's used and now it's old. I need to go get
Wow.
another one. You know, it's that mentality of you're trying to fill yourself up with something
Yeah.
because you feel some emptiness inside. And I don't know how that happened or where it started, but I wasn't necessarily in the perfect industry to nurture my self-esteem.
How old were you when you started
11.
modeling? 11. Wow. And your career spanned decades. I mean, you were still modeling. You're still modeling
I
now.
still
And
have
I
an
want,
agent.
Yes, okay.
I'm retired, but I still have 2 contracts out that I'm waiting for, but I'm really retired.
that must feel nice
Feels
in some
great.
regards.
Feels so great.
Well, I do want to, I'm going to hop around a little bit,
Yeah.
but I do want to talk about, so you have said that you're a cancer disruptor, and I want to ask about how you would define that. And then let's also talk about the fact that you've done modeling campaigns since your illness and have been very vocal about females feeling whole,
Yes.
even when they have had their implants removed or have decided not to go forward with reconstructive surgery. So if you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, ironically, I think I've become more vocal since my implants were removed. I had breast implant illness in 2020. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had mastectomies, but I never saw my chest without breasts because I had expanders and then implants right away. My chest was never flat. I never thought that would ever happen. And so in 2020, when I had this MRSA infection in my chest and I woke up in the recovery room, I felt like down on my chest and I was in so much pain. It was like an extremely, they took skin and it's kind of a gnarly surgery because it was a MRSA infection.
That's a big deal. I mean, the
Wasn't
fact
a-
that you had that on
It was a
top of-
MRSA infection.
Yeah.
And so when I woke up from that surgery and I felt this space, I was like, is this concave?
Oh,
And I was heartbroken. I just didn't understand. I couldn't, I guess, I couldn't wrap my brain around it. Yeah, it's weird recently.
no, that's sorry. I just can't imagine.
Um,
Yeah, we could take a beat.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I woke up from the hospital just in such emotional pain. And then it was months later when the physical pain was gone that I said to myself, okay, you used every part of your story to help people. Why can't you use this part? Go back to modeling. I had never intended to go back to modeling.
Really?
Never. I'd stopped modeling when my arm debacle happened. And then after my cancer diagnosis, I was like, this is fine. I'm never going back to work and I'm fine with that. And so when this happened with my chest, and by that point I had such a large following on social medias, I thought when they'd send me these messages about how heartbroken they were and they couldn't show it to their husbands and they couldn't walk out of their house without a prosthetic, it just broke my heart over and over again. And I thought, what can I do to help these women other than be on social media saying my beauty was never dissected because my chest was stolen. My beauty is, I am whole.
Yeah.
I am made whole in God's image. Obviously my insecurities were completely gone by that point. I was very much strong. I was strong mentally and physically, and my self-esteem was very strong when I lost my implants. Thank goodness. But it was still emotionally difficult, even with such strong faith. So I decided that I needed to do something bigger than just be on social media. And so I did call my modeling agency and I said, I'd really like to come back to work. And they were like, great. And I said, well, I need to come in and show you. And they said, when I went in, they said no.
Really?
Yeah, they said no.
How did that feel?
It felt
Were
fine.
you surprised? I mean,
I wasn't surprised.
yeah, you've been in the industry and you know how it goes, but still.
I had such a strong self-esteem at that point that I really decided that being a light and going back to modeling, even if they said no, I could figure out a different way because my ego wasn't involved.
Yes.
You know, if they said no, okay. Because
Yeah.
what is that? Pride and ego? When
Right.
somebody says no to you, you take it personally. I wasn't taking it personally. They couldn't see my vision, and that was fine. So I called my manager in New York, and I said, I need you to get me into New York Fashion Week, just somebody to watch the show. And because I was not a runway model, I was a print model. And I'd never been to New York Fashion Week. And so she said, I'll get you in some shows. So I went up to New York, flew up to New York, and she got me into some shows. And at the end of the shows, I would walk up to the designers politely and kind of get through their entourage. And I would say, my name is Christine Handy. I consider myself a cancer disruptor. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I'd like to walk in your show. I've been modeling for now 4 decades. And some people paid attention. And I ended up signing with one of the largest modeling agencies in the country a year later.
Wow.
And so it just goes to show you that, you know, if one door closes, another door will open.
That's what I was just thinking.
But that's
right.
resilience. That's
resilience.
determination.
Yeah.
And so it was about a year after I decided to go back to modeling that I partnered with Victoria's Secret as a breastless model. And I think it helped a ton of people. And I continue to help people because, you know, I modeled in Miami Swim Week in a bathing suit at 50 some odd years old. It's
Incredible.
crazy.
That's incredible, though. What courage.
Well,
And also, I don't know if that's even the right word, but what an inspiration. And how do women, you know, that have chosen or had it chosen for them that they couldn't have reconstructive surgery, what's the feedback been like when you're up there, you know, showing how beautiful you are and whole, given everything you've been through? What do people say after shows and when they come up to you, I'm sure, and talk to you about it?
well, I think for women, it transcends breast cancer. I
Right.
think it transcends whether you are a survivor or not. It's showing courage. And so often in my journey, I didn't have any courage, and so I borrow it from my friends. Or people go on social media and they see somebody else doing something courageous and they borrow it from that person. So I was just trying to show courage so people could borrow it until they could have their own.
Oh, I love that phrase, borrowing courage when you don't have your own. That's something that we'll all remember. That's really amazing. I want to touch on, because you mentioned this, and it's, at least in reading your book, and I would imagine in seeing your film, faith and spirituality, God, however we refer to it, and we all may refer to it differently, that is something that is hugely important to you. And I'm curious how this experience has deepened that relationship with God for you.
Well, God is my measure, for sure. I mean, when I go to bed at night, I think to myself, did I do enough to help people today? Did I show up for the people that I love? Did I love the people that are in my life today? Did I reach out to so-and-so? And then I'm okay. But my measure is not things of this world anymore. It's not a bag I love pretty things. I
Who
do.
doesn't?
Who doesn't? And I like to look nice. It's not that I
Yes.
don't like to, look pretty. But it's not how I weigh my self-esteem. And so I think that, the focus being on God and faith, nobody can take that from me.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to when pre-cancer, my friends would say to me, I really would like you to do this Bible study with me. And I'd say, no, I've got a yoga class. I go to yoga every Wednesday. And I think back at those times and I was coveting, obviously, things of this world, and I missed it. I missed the importance of that. And so when they were helping me through my journey, they really taught me, one, what it looked like to show up for somebody and why that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say to me, when we're done with serving you, you're going to go out and serve the world. And God would never forsake you, and we will never forsake you. And that really, giving up their time and their resources for their own families, it didn't matter to them because I was their Bible study at the time.
Wow.
And so for 15 months, I learned that from them. And that was a pivotal moment in my life and my journey. And I realized that the tenets of faith were more important than what society feeds us often, which is, the billboards they're seducing, right?
Oh, seduction
They're
everywhere, right?
It's very glamorous, and
Yes,
they roped
exactly.
me in, and I was stuck. But I'd rather talk about God than anything else. I'd rather listen to spiritual podcasts and spiritual music because it keeps me on the right path,
Right.
and that's what I feed my soul.
I love that you remind too that that is something that can't be taken away. All the physical can be stripped away, which you experienced, but that is something that is at the core special and truly yours, and all of it. What would you say to someone, and I'm sure you've gotten asked this quite a bit, or or someone coming up who's been recently diagnosed. What's your advice to someone that's been recently diagnosed?
I don't get asked that a lot. I actually get asked, what would you say to somebody who is recently diagnosed? And what I say to people is say, because people don't know what to say.
Right.
And I always say, just tell them you don't know what to say, but you want to be there to help them. So, I mentor breast cancer patients, whether it's online or in person. And I try to say to them in a non-threatening way, this is how I focus my life, which is faith. Because some people don't focus on that, and that's fine. I'm not trying to push that on anybody. I can only share with how I got through something. But I also talk about, giving yourself a lot of grace because we mess up in, our journeys. We get angry. Fear translates into anger. And so when I was very afraid during the beginning of my journey, I got very angry, angry at life and angry at myself. And so I talk about grace a lot, and I talk about, obviously faith, and I talk about finding the right people that will always stay with you in the seasons of goodness and the seasons of difficulty. But keep those people around because you're going to need them. And I also tell them, talk about ego.
Yeah.
You've got to let go of your pride and your ego because so often we're taught in this world that we can do it on our own, and independence is revered in this world. I think that's pride. I think that's ego. When I was down to nothing and literally couldn't take a sip of water, that's when I was almost at my best because that's when people were able to show up for me. That's when people were able to help me. And that's what we're supposed to do. And so if we let go of our pride and ego and say, okay, I'm going to accept your help, even though prior to cancer, I'd be like, oh no, I'm good. I can do it on my own. I've got this.
Right.
We don't really,
Yeah.
right? And so I talk about that a lot. Let people help you. Let people serve because that's a gift that they want to give. Don't take that from them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, and you mentioned your father and his reaction to the film and your son's reaction to the film. What has been a positive side to your journey with breast cancer with your family? Obviously, there was so much pain and suffering and a lot of hardship. But then, there's also things that I bet make you smile, and there was a lot of growth and some positive outcomes. So I'm curious about that.
Well, I think it's how we react ultimately to pain and trauma. And I think my kids seeing me try to help other people is a good lesson for them because I think that they saw me, being very self-indulgent for a very long time. Again, I talk about the unflattering parts because I don't ever want to say about my story, oh, I had all these people show up for me. I had all these people bring me gifts and they were there for me every day and my life was so great. There was some lacking at home, right? It's not fair to anybody because they're going to compare themselves to maybe their journey and be like, well, shoot, like she's just this privileged girl, right? Okay, maybe, but there's parts that were difficult at home. And so I try to just be very vulnerable and honest about the story so it's relatable to people. But there's been a lot of healing with my own sons. Again, they're boys, and so it's not easy to emote how they feel, especially at 11 and 13. And again, fear translates into anger, and so they were afraid I was going to die. So what would they do? They'd push me away.
Yeah.
They would spend no time with me, and that's fair. I
Especially at
understand
those
it.
ages too, right?
Of course.
That's delicate ages to be
Yeah.
going through that. You mentioned the word privilege, which I'm curious about how you would describe privilege now versus how you would have described privilege, say, 10 years ago, before all of this started.
What a great question. I think the greatest privileges in my life are to show up for people, are to love people, are to serve people. I think it's one of the greatest privileges I will ever do is to do a project like this with my intention to help. I think privilege, my definition of privilege before this was I had the privilege of money and things and access. Those things that look different now. Yeah, great question.
It takes one thing to beat cancer, which you've so courageously done. It takes another level of courage to share your story in such a vulnerable way, which shows in your book, Walk Beside Me, and then now also with your film premiere, Hello, Beautiful. Why do you think it's important to share our personal stories?
Well, I took it as a call to action from my friends who said when they showed up for me for month after month after month that was kind of my next step. And I really took that as something that was necessary, especially since what I was seeing in the world, that I was young and diagnosed with cancer, and I didn't have any contemporaries with it. So I thought I could be a light to that demographic of people, that kind of younger group. But I also thought at the time, because I had become so ingrained and kind of focused on my faith, that it was kind of my mission. And so to be vulnerable in your story is, one, it takes courage, you're right. But to hoard your story, I think it doesn't help anybody. And so it was a choice. It is always a choice for people. And obviously, I'm not telling people that they should or shouldn't. But if you add up the amount of people that I have helped, if I had hoarded my story, I could have never helped those people. I think that would have been a waste of pain.
Yes, let's talk about that further too, that you've turned pain into purpose. And if you had someone, really going through it, and I'm sure you have people talk to you at different stages of a cancer journey or a medical journey, what takeaways would you give to someone of how to turn pain into purpose?
Well, being vulnerable, I think, is the biggest way to serve in pain. Because so often, like, let's take social media or, podcasts often. People tell the flowery version of their story. They tell the moments that they won the award or they got the whatever. And I just think that's unfair to the world because and all the highlight reels that we see on social media, I think they're hurting people. And so if you have a diagnosis or if you're going through pain or a season of illness, I think that can be such a serving moment, and you can touch lives. It's relatable and it's happening. It's not like people don't go through illness in different seasons of their life and in difficult seasons. It doesn't have to be illness, divorce. If nobody's out there talking about it, then people feel very alone. Loneliness is tough. Nobody wants to feel alone. So I think by sharing in a vulnerable way, in an honest way, it helps people not feel alone, and it also helps people feel like they're kind of normal versus just looking on social media and seeing everybody going on these amazing trips and go, gosh, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not
I feel
doing
bad.
it right. Exactly.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in comparison,
Right.
but I think a lot of people do it.
Oh, I think we live in a culture of comparative suffering. Someone used
Definitely.
that term with me. You mentioned trips, so let's talk about travel a little bit. Travel's obviously been really important to you. You've taken your family to many wonderful places. How has travel been a healer for you, or has it?
Oh, no, it definitely has.
Yeah.
In fact, well, in the last 3 years, I've done some pretty significant travel with my significant other, and I think it's been very healing for me. First of all, you get out of your own space. You're out of your own head, and you see different cultures, and you see different. For us, we just got back from Antarctica in January, and just being around nature for an extended period of time, I think was just a really healing way for myself to just kind of get away from the difficulty of trying to get this movie out there and kind of the stress of it. And, I live in chronic pain. I have pain in my arm and I still have pain in my chest. And, you know, when you're out traveling and you're doing adventures and you're getting out of your own head, that helps with getting away from that kind of pain as well.
Is there or are there specific destinations that you like to go back to year after year, or do you like to go to new places?
I think both. I think I like to feel very grounded and rooted. I think especially because I've had a lot of illness in my life, you know, being kind of having a home base really matters to me. But when I travel, I like to learn. So I like to do kind of historical stuff and learn from different places around the world. There's so many places to go. Yeah.
Do you have a trip, upcoming trip planned that you're looking forward to?
I'd like to go to Asia. It has been on my list for a very long time, so we're talking about it. Yeah.
That's on my list too, by the way. I haven't been to Asia yet either, and I hear it's incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Excellent. Okay, rapid fire. How do you sharpen your knife?
Oh, God. Bible, reading.
And what is a daily ritual you protect at all costs?
I pray at 12:30.
One place in the world that has changed how you see everything.
Maybe Antarctica.
And how so? How did it change your perspective?
It broadened my perspective, but it made me feel like simple is better. It made me really yearn for a simpler life, being in Antarctica. Yeah, I really shifted there.
That's awesome. What are you hoping your children or loved ones say about you someday?
That my mom served.
Failure you're secretly grateful for.
Failed. Honey, what have I failed that I was glad about?
I don't think she fails at much, so that's a hard one.
Ask her about her cooking.
Oh,
Oh, yes. Are you as great of a chef
terrible.
as I? So am I. We're joined by Tom Turkla, Christine's partner. Tom, welcome. We're happy to have you here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Christine, tell us how you met.
We met on Zoom. Actually, the first time we ever met, we were set up, and Tom lives in Boston, and at the time I was in Miami, and we Zoomed for about 6 times, and I really I tell him now all the time, I fell in love with him on our 3rd Zoom. He somehow knew I loved the color yellow, and he wore a yellow shirt, and my heart just melted, and I thought, this is my guy. And then he flew down to Miami, and we went on kind of a weekend of dates, and I'll let him tell his side of that story.
My side of the story, huh? It was interesting because when you are our age, dating with the technology didn't exist when we grew up. And so especially when you're in different cities, you know, when you're in high school or college, you date, and if it goes well, you want to go see somebody the next weekend. It's a lot harder to do when you got to fly 1,000 miles. And so I actually own a bunch of property in Florida, and I combined a business trip, and we set one date on a Friday, and we said, look, if it works well, we can have a contingency date on a Saturday, and that was it. And if it just sucks, then I go to work on Monday. And it turned out that we had a really good time the Monday night or Friday night. And then we went again the Saturday night, and then actually Sunday night. And then she actually came with me on a couple of my property tours on Monday and Tuesday. And so it worked out well. And she did say something that was very important too, which was we did get to know each other on Zoom. And the technology is good in that it takes a little pressure off, you know, when you do it on Zoom. You were in, I think, Wisconsin, right, at your parents' house when we met. And I was primarily, I think, at home in Boston. But we got to know each other well. So it was not as
Distracting.
as distracting a meeting for the first time because we actually knew each other a little bit
Right.
before we met. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, 6 Zooms is 6 hours. And you don't have a waiter that's, come over to disrupt the conversation or to interject. And so we really, when you're sitting in front of a screen for 6 hours with somebody, you really get to know them. And it becomes very lovely. It was lovely for me.
And the yellow shirt, I love that. But I'm also curious about, in those Zooms, I would imagine, Tom, that Christine was forthcoming at some point about her medical journey. And I'm curious, and now you've been together for how long before I asked this question? 3 years, I think? So 3 years. What have you found now that you're watching Christine tell her story to a wider audience, most inspiring about her?
It's actually pretty simple and very privileged to get to know it as well. You know, life can be difficult. Just to state the obvious, we all go through our own pains and travails of different types. And how you deal with those difficulties really defines you and defines your character. And we all know people like that. And, you know, she went through pure hell multiple times. And instead of, you know, ruing in misery or complaining or saying why, she used it for good. And that's not easy to do. It takes a lot to overcome that kind of adversity. And in Christine's case, multiple times. But I really am proud of her and proud of the way that she uses it and as a message of hope for other people. And that's really important because, you know, there are a lot of people, as you're all well aware, there are a lot of pains out there right now, a lot of incidences, increasing incidences of mental health and loneliness, those kinds of things. And we all need help. And it's very hard to do it. You know, we joked earlier about how, you know, I'm a very private person. And, you know, I grew up at a time when you didn't share things like that. You dealt with it yourself. And so I give a lot of credit to go through. I've gone through things in my life as well, not as severe as she's gone through, but how you handle it really defines you. And that really defines her to me in terms of how well she's handled it, overcome it, dealt with it, and also used it as a tool to help other people.
Well, I hear you're both, Christine, we know that you love to travel. Tom, I hear you've been to 92 countries. Is that right?
That's correct.
Well, where have you been? That's been some of your most favorite destinations, and where are you looking forward to going?
I travel a lot for business, but also personal. And my favorite place, probably the place to which I've been the most, is Paris. I go to Europe a lot. I've really traveled all over the world. Antarctica was on my bucket list as a place to go, and Christine's right, it really is nothing like anything you can imagine. My next large trip, bucket list trip, is a safari in Africa, and we're planning on that for a couple summers from now. We have a good friend who spent a lot of her career in Japan, and that's probably our next trip we're planning right now, is to go to Japan, and she'll be our guide for a couple weeks.
Oh, how fun.
To take us to off the beaten path places. And I think that's what we have planned right now. We're probably going to go to Europe one more time this summer, but we haven't planned where yet.
Those sound like amazing trips. When you go on safari, will you take your 2 sons? And do you have children as
I have
well?
4
Will you
children.
travel? Oh, wow.
Yes.
Will the children go with you, do you think?
That's the intent, yes. Depending upon schedules, it's hard to coordinate everything, but they're all going to be invited. So.
Nice. One last question for you, Tom. What is one thing that listeners would be surprised to know about Christine?
To surprise them, I think it would be, as Christine mentioned, and has a lot to do with her story, she has a good fortune of coming from privilege. And that has a lot of different manifestations, from good schools to safe streets to things like that, and to having people take care of you. And that really hasn't affected her in terms of her thinking. I grew up with a lot of people that way. We all have, who've had privilege, who take it for granted and who assume it as part of their life. And also, I think, makes them more fragile to deal with difficulties. And so I used to joke with Christine about, you know, the lottery from which she came, which is not a fault, not a good or bad thing. She's very fortunate. But to not have it matter is probably the most important thing. That what matters to her is her faith, her relationships, how she takes care of her kids. And as you can tell from most of this interview, how much she cares about the people around her who've helped her and who care.
Well said. Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to speak with both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Stories like this are a window into what makes the Exclusive Resorts community unlike any other, filled with members who live with intention and travel without compromise. With more than 400 private residences and curated experiences around the world, the club continues to redefine the art of living well. Learn more at exclusiveresorts.com.